Lo and behold, 3 days later, why wouldn't you? They're twins. My heart literally sank. I have no other ideas, so we're gonna try this. Hi guys, welcome back to another Nerd Rants. I watched the How to Train Your Dragon remake. So the circumstances under which I ended up going to see it were very ironic, because I have Bible study on Thursdays and I got there a little bit early, and so that was the question we were talking about with the people that were there early, is whether we were going to see the live action How to Train Your Dragon. And I blame Disney. Live action remakes have a very, very bad reputation in my brain because of Disney. But I knew it's like, this is DreamWorks, and the trailers looked better than literally. The trailers looked better than the Disney live action remakes put together. So I wasn't sure, and so very mixed bag of emotions. I think my answer verbatim was I wouldn't go out of my way to see it on my own, but if someone invited me, I wouldn't be opposed. Lo and behold, 3 days later, having Sunday dinner with my fiance's family, his sister asks if we wanted to go see it with her and one of her friends. I literally chuckled out loud because the irony. So we went, and I will say, the vibe we get from the trailers, it holds. It is better than all of the Disney live action remakes combined, and it's very shot for shot for the most part, as far as the scenes and the lines and those kinds of things. They're very shot for shot, and the look, like the CGI is very well done, so the dragons look great, and the flying for the most part, like CGI wise, everything looks great, and I'm not cringing at any of the stuff that comes out of it. It's well done. For the most part, the wardrobe looks good. There's a couple outfits for like Astrid that are just a little strange to look at, because like the sleeves are one color and then the torso is a different color. And so it's a very stark difference, but she's also wearing armor, so you can't entirely tell why they're different colors. Like you can't see the lines and how things are divided up and all that, so it looks a little weird. And she also has one where her pants and her like shirt are pretty much the same. Either are the same color or very close to the same color. Like they're both red, and so it looks like she's wearing this giant like red long underwear with her armor over top of it. So like some of the costuming's a little strange. It's mostly on Astrid. Hiccup honestly gets a better outfit in when he goes to kill his first dragon. I think the one he wears for that looks a little bit better than his just normal outfit. But like, they're not bad. They're like not Snow White live action remake bad. There's just a couple awkward outfits for the kids specifically. Acting wise, honestly, Gerard Butler carried the entire thing with acting. He did very well, and I think it's partially because he's the voice actor for Stoic in the animated series as well, so he is very very knowledgeable and into this character already, and so he can go into it with all of the emotion that he had from the first film, all of the emotion that he can bring in because of his knowledge from the other 3 films and having been in those as well. And so he can bring in all of this, and he's a voice actor, so he does it very well. So it's interesting to see the dynamic of this voice actor for stoic and doing the acting as well, which he also does a great job with that. But then compared to these other actors who are not voice actors. And so the difference in expression is kind of interesting to see, because Gerard Butler's very, very expressive with how he delivers his lines, and there's emotion in that. And I feel like he brings more into it versus some of the other actors who are just actors. And so they don't have that experience of having to express so much with their voice, and not necessarily having their face to use as a tool, which is something that voice actors have to deal with. Is yes, they're getting it probably having a face animated on a character with a face being animated around what they say, but they can't physically use their face as a tool when acting, when it's just them in a booth. And so they have to do a lot of expression through their voice. And so it's interesting seeing the difference between Gerard Butler doing it with that experience as a voice actor versus the others who don't have that same experience. Yeah, that's probably the biggest distinction I have, and that's probably what makes some of the other actors feel not quite as good, I guess, because they don't have that, that same experience as an actor in general, but specifically as a voice actor, and having that training to use their voice more expressively. That being said, I think the main heart of the cast did a pretty good job. Gobber was definitely a very different version of Gobber. He was not the animated version of Gobber. But he didn't do a bad job. I went into this, and this is one where I went into it and I started seeing the different things, and I could tell, especially with it being a lot, very lines being word for word for a lot of it, and shots being scenes being shot for shot. I could mentally feel myself getting hypercritical about it, and so by a quarter of the way into the movie, I literally just went, okay, I know I'm being hypercritical about this. I need to just drop the animated version to the back of my mind for a bit, just to watch this movie as a movie and stop and try not to be super hypercritical about it. So with my attempting to push back on the nostalgia, favoritism or whatever, visually is good. I think it's visually good, besides some awkward outfits. The acting for the most part was good. Astrid was the kids, the main kids, they are probably, for the most part, I'm blanking on Hiccup's actor's last name, Mason Thames. He probably was the most expressive of all of them, at least consistently, because they were definitely, you could tell that they were probably the least experienced actors in that movie, because those main kids were just not as expressive and not quite at the same level as a lot of the other actors that were there, and it shows for a lot of their screen time, which is, it's unfortunate. They're the main characters, they're the ones we have to they're the ones that they want you to be attached to, but I'll be real, Hiccup, I enjoyed his performance. He did Hiccup very well, and he definitely had more expression. So when it got to those scenes where there was emotion, like him confronting his dad after they captured Toothless, he brings that emotion into it, and he does that well. And then I'm forgetting Astrid's actress last name too, but Nico Astrid. She does a good job, I think, for the most part. She's playing a more stoic kind of sullen character anyway, so it being her being more serious was good. She did bring good emotion into it sometimes, But she definitely did have moments where she was just a little bit bland, and I chalk that up probably to some inexperience in the acting field, which is fine, and she did well enough, I think. But there were just certain deliveries of lines that were a little lackluster. Like, I wanted a little bit more expression from her. But those two are probably the best of like the main character cast, because Fish, like, they tried to bring more of his nerdiness into it. They tried to bring in his dragon cards that he develops between the first and second movie. And they do the nerdiness well, but nothing else. Like, they make that very much his character, which is a big part of his character in the original, but he's also a fighter because he's a Viking, and he can fight, but he also is a nerd about these dragons, and he knows what to do with them. So he seems, very, very one-sided, I feel like. He's just a nerd, and that's it. And I don't know. I don't know if his actor had an accent or not, because there were moments where he's just like straight American talking whatever else, and then there were other times where it felt like he had the slightest bit of accent, and I didn't know what to make of his voice. I was not a big fan of any of the other ones. Like, the twins were not twins. They were clearly not twins, and I get boy and girl, so they're fraternals. They're not going to be identical, but like, get twins. Get twins to play the twins, because why wouldn't you? They're twins. And I wasn't a huge fan of their actors either. Like, there was very little like I think that was the biggest issue. There was no chemistry between any of the characters in that main group. The most on-screen chemistry we got in any kind of way was Nico and Hiccup, but that's just because they're on the screen more often than anyone else. But there was no chemistry between any of the other characters, in my opinion. That was the biggest, that's the biggest letdown for me, especially concerning the main kids, is there is no chemistry between the characters. I didn't feel how these five were a group, and they were friends, they worked together and all of that, and then we have Hiccup on the outside. And I didn't feel that. There was no like connection and chemistry between them. So that was my biggest problem with them. Snotlout had his moments. Like, the actor for Snotlout, there are moments where he did very well. And then the rest of the time it was kind of meh. But I think he's probably ranked, he and Aster are probably tied for a second, and then Hiccup's above them as far as expression and like upholding the character well. So I think that's kind of the ranking I'm at. The twins and Fish Legs are very much tied at the bottom. Like, I couldn't care less about any of their characters, and there was no chemistry between any of them. And it was so sad that there's no chemistry between them, because they're the main cast. They're supposed to be kind of these enemies to friends and all of that, and there was just none of that chemistry happening on screen, so it was just kind of upsetting. So acting-wise, Gerard Butler carried it. Nick Frost did pretty good as Gobber, but it was just a different version of Gobber, so I had to like set aside what I wanted Gobber to be, and kind of look at it from this is a different version, because this is a remake, so it's a different actor, so there's a different take on it. So I had to like set aside the nostalgia and be like, this is his version of Gobber. And for that version of Gobber, he did pretty well. I think that's all the acting stuff to talk about. That's really the main characters. I will say I'm not sure. I mean, it was purposeful, obviously, but I don't know if it was trying to be like a feminist message. Anyway, so they have all the Vikings, and they made them kind of diverse by saying they came from all the different clans to gather at Berk in order to fight the dragons, which is an interesting origin idea to have for Berk. So it's like, it's not a bad reason for them to be diverse. It was kind of fun, interesting to see. But anyway, they're having this meeting and to try and, you know, Stoick's trying to convince him to go on a voyage to, one last time, to try and find the hive before winter. Or the nest, excuse me, the nest before winter. And then he's trying to, you know, rally, that's the word I'm looking for. He's trying to rally all of, like, the kind of clan leaders or whatever that have, you know, come together from all the different clans. And he goes around, he's like pointing out different people and what they did. And yeah, it kind of seemed a little bit like a feminist push because everyone he pointed out was a girl. Every story he's like, oh, you took down a natter single-handedly, or Zippleback single-handedly, and he was something about a natter and all of that, but it was all girls. So it was a little bit weird. Like, throw one or two guys in there. You talked about like 4 or 5 different people. Just throw like 1, maybe 2 guys in there and it won't feel as much like you're trying to put a message out there. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being hypercritical about that specific scene and just looking for a problem. I don't know. But he pointed out only women, and so, which isn't a bad thing. But it just makes it feel less realistic that he's only pointing out women when he's surrounded by both men and women who are both warriors. So, I don't know. Yeah. Also, they added some lines, they took out some lines, but that's really the main changes that that was minimal as far as the changes to the script from the original. My least favorite one, the one that they said it, I immediately noticed it and went, no, was he's getting ready to fight the monstrous nightmare. And we're having the scene of him and Astrid in like the entryway, and we have the moment where he goes, in the original he goes, if anything happens, make sure they don't get toothless. Make sure nothing happens to Toothless. And that's his line. And his driving force of, even though I'm about to like risk my life with this dragon, make sure that my dragon stays safe, my friend stays safe. And it's beautiful. It's like seeing this motivation of he truly has seen what these dragons really are, and that they're not these monsters that everyone thought they were, and him bringing it to protect him. If I die, protect him. Like the trust he has in Astrid, and also like his motivation and his heart for Toothless are shown in that scene, and it's so cool. And it's something I didn't really even notice until they changed it. And so we have everything leading up to that. Absolutely, it's like pretty much the same. And then he goes, if anything happens to me, don't get involved. My father respects you too much. And it just, so we have him leading up to this line. I am ready for this line. And he says, don't get involved, Astrid. My father respects you too much. And all of a sudden, the entire seriousness of that scene just fell flat. I literally was like, oh, emotion, I'm ready for this. You convinced Astrid that like Toothless is this good guy. You're about to lay your and Toothless's life in her hands, essentially. And got all this lead up, I'm ready for it. And then he goes, don't get involved. And turns it onto her and him caring about her. And I legitimately like slumped inside. My heart literally sank. It was so sad, and I was fairly like reserved at the time, because public. I was mad. I'm legitimately mad about it. It's such a different, it's because you take what he originally had as this motivation, his heart for Toothless, his trust in Astrid, and we just flip it. And he goes, no, just stay out of it. I don't want you or your reputation to be hurt by interfering in what I'm about to do. Instead of, I am putting my best friend's life in your hands. If I die, protect him. I trust you with that. I just, it's very maddening, and I hate it. I legitimately hate it. As I sit here like thinking back on it, I really, really don't like that change, and that is the worst change that they made. It's bad. It's straight up just bad, and it gives a different vibe to Hiccup's character in that moment, because he's fighting so hard. He's about to go into an arena to show in front of the entire village of dragon-killing Vikings, throw down his weapon, literally renounce his place among the tribe in an attempt to prove to them what he has learned about dragons. And then he's like, but I care more about your reputation, Astrid. Also, there's like 2 scenes. I think there's only 2 scenes that they took out, which is whatever. I think the movie might be longer, so why did you take these scenes out? Anyway, they took out him getting stuck on Toothless's saddle, and so Astrid kind of, him having to go to Gobber's shop to undo it, and then getting caught by Astrid and playing that off, which isn't a huge scene, but it's a good back and forth banter chemistry scene for them, which, yeah, they didn't do very well, so it's like fine, they probably wouldn't have done the best anyway. But anyway, so they took that scene out. But one that they took out that was actually important to the plot, like important to the end climax, is they have the whole test drive. He celebrates, Toothless shoots his plasma bolt, and so they ride into an explosion. And then it cuts to a scene of them on the shore, and they're eating, and he finds out through the terrible terrors fighting over the scraps that they're not fireproof on the inside. Which is the key to them defeating the Red Death at the end of the movie, is that concept of their scales are fireproof, but their insides aren't, and that's why he shoots a fireball of like plasma bolt into the Red Death's mouth. And then in this, so he doesn't figure that out. And so at the end, it's him going, I don't know what to do, last ditch effort. Let's see if this works. And boom. And then they shoot it into his mouth as basically a Hail Mary. They don't know what else to do. They can't stop it. So we're going to shoot a firebolt into his mouth, or a plasma bolt into his mouth, and hope that works. Whereas in the original, it's this educated realization, and it's an actual plan, that he develops from prior knowledge, because Hiccup's a calculating character. He learns, he creates plans based on his knowledge. He doesn't really throw a Hail Mary most of the time and just hope it works. Most of the time. So when it kind of goes against his character a bit. And it's just, why would you think to shoot it in his mouth? Like, we don't get any idea as to why you think shooting a plasma bolt into the Red Death's mouth will do anything. It's just like, I have no other ideas, so we're gonna try this. Which, yeah, doesn't quite track with Hiccup's character, and it's giving him less credit than he's due. I feel like I think he is a fairly calculating character, and especially we see that for anyone who's like watched the Race to the Edge or like Riders of Berk series that take place between the first and second movie, we see more of him being calculated and learning and making plans based on this, and being this very smart character. We have an entire villain in the second to last season of Race to the Edge, where he is going up against someone who is smarter than him. And as much as he tries to outsmart Vigo, Vigo is one step ahead, and seeing that struggle because he's a calculating character. And in the end, he learning to be like, I kind of do have to throw a Hail Mary in order to be unpredictable, and having that aspect of it. And that's in the future. Like, he's a calculating character. It's kind of development for him to get to the point where he's like, sometimes I have to take a chance. and until then he's been very calculating, makes plans based on his knowledge and based on discoveries and all of that. And so seeing him in this remake just kind of go, let's try it, hope it works. Like literally his line is, I hope this works, or let's see if this works, one of those two. No, though, that's not Hiccup. So that, yeah, those were the two very unfortunate changes in my opinion, and they changed the tone of Hiccup's character, which is really unfortunate, because other than that, Mason James does a great job as Hiccup. Like, he's awkward, and he does honestly some very good line deliveries throughout the movie, but they take away to a scene and a line that are very, and like, not, it's not obviously integral to his character, but when you take them away, you realize they are integral to showing who his character is. So it's, yeah, that's unfortunate, and that's probably my biggest issue with it, because like I can get over some of the meh acting. I enjoy the movie less, but I give some, I think, first-time actors, I haven't seen them in anything else. I give them some grace for that, because they're still learning. Is this probably the best first project for them? This huge thing that lots of people are going to be hypercritical about and judging? Maybe not, but I give them grace for that, because you know, younger actors and actresses, not as much experience, it's not necessarily going to be the best performance, so give them some grace. I don't like your characters because they aren't portrayed well, and that's not entirely the actor's fault. But yeah, but that's my biggest issue, is how the things they took away that just changed the vibe of Hiccup's character at these very like penultimate and climactic moments in his character arc. So that, yeah, it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. I think those are the biggest things to talk about, honestly, are like those things. The acting was meh. Gerard Butler definitely carried it on the acting side of it. Like visually, besides some awkward costumes, it was very pleasant to look at. Like the CGI for the dragons was good. They did the CGI very well. Burke was beautiful, both the things they probably CGI'd and like the on-site forests and whatever else. So very visually appealing to look at. Yeah. And then those two things. It's literally two things. It is half a sentence and a like less than a minute long scene, but they're so impactful to what Hiccup's character is, and they took them out, and it was very, very jarring to see how much that changed Hiccup's character. But yeah, those are my thoughts. It wasn't a bad remake. Like I said, it's better than all of Disney's remakes combined, pretty much, except maybe Jungle Book. But again, that's a very low bar, because Disney's bad at making remakes. Which I discovered, I was side tangent, because I was thinking about this when I was in the midst of processing. The reason Jungle Book's live action remake was good. One, we probably had people who actually cared working on it, and it wasn't just a money grab because it was like the first one. But also, and forgive me if I'm wrong, I didn't grow up watching Jungle Book all the time. I was more the experimental age of Disney. But anyway, Jungle Book has a very vague and like loose story. Like it is a kid in the jungle, there's a tiger chasing him, but we don't get a whole reason for it in the original beyond he's a tiger and that's a human, and a human doesn't belong in the jungle. And so basically the OG Jungle Book is kind of just him going around the jungle and all the different creatures he interacts with, and the threats and the friends and all of that, and then eventually ending up at the human village, and then they send him off there because it's safer, because there's a tiger after you. And then so that it's very loose, so there's characters and there's kind of a subtle plot going on, but not a super like, it's not a super tight plot where the storyline is super integral and it has to follow this pattern in order to like go to its conclusion. It's a very loose plot and kind of this more vague storyline. And that's probably why it could translate into live action remake more easily and better, because there's more room for them to add a more concrete plot, like with a reason for the tiger to be chasing him and actually have a quest to get him to safety, and how they string things together, and they can change kind of how things happen without like dishonoring the original story, because it's a looser storyline. And I think that's why Jungle Book worked so much better than any of the other movies that they've adapted, because all of the other movies, they have this tight storyline that they're trying to follow, but they also try to do what Jungle Book did, where they kind of reinvent it a little bit, but it doesn't work because the original storyline is such a tightly woven plot line, and you can't branch off too much or the whole thing unravels. So I think that's why that live action worked the best compared to all the other Disney remakes. End of tangent. That's also why this one isn't as good. Like, Jungle Book is probably better. It's still better than the How to Train Your Dragon remake, and that's mainly because of those two little things that they took out of Hiccup's character. But just, yeah, I don't know. That's really all my thoughts on this. Is Gerard Butler carried the acting with Mason Thames, as far as staying true to the character, being expressive, all of that. Very pleasant to look at as far as like the CGI and the scenery and like the dragons go. And yeah, the writing was not horrible, but they just took the wrong things out. Like, there are scenes, I don't know why they took out the not fireproof on the inside scene. Like, why would you take that out? It's less than a minute and integral information for the climax. I also don't know why they changed the "if anything happens to me" line before the Monstrous Nightmare fight. It seemed like they were pushing a little bit of feminism with a little bit feminist agenda with Astrid, because she takes the charge in the final battle. They add a line when he's talking about the fire brigade they'd be nothing without their captain and things like that. So it seemed like they were pushing a little bit of a feminist agenda, just a little bit with Astrid's character. And maybe that's why they changed it, because it's like, don't get involved. My father respects you too much. And so giving his father a higher opinion of her, but him trying to protect her reputation versus protect his dragon, which makes no sense for his character. It makes honestly no sense for the story for him to be very really concerned about her reputation. But they threw it in there, and that's the only conceivable reason I can think of, is because of the subtle, like, well, not so subtle, but the little things that they were throwing in to kind of push feminist agenda with Astrid's character, which it didn't work, and it was not a good change. And that's the thing I'm most mad about, are those two things that they took out. Otherwise, I think it's a solid movie. I think it is a solid movie. My opinion of it is brought down quite a bit because despite my efforts, I'm still comparing it to the original. But if I were to my rule of thumb has been, when I eventually have children, they will not be allowed to watch the Disney live action remakes. They will only watch the originals, because the live action remakes are not great, and they have been made in an era of cinema that I don't enjoy. This is probably the only live action remake besides Jungle Book. Like, the live action How to Train Your Dragon and Jungle Book are probably the only live action remakes I would allow my children to watch before their teen years, when they can kind of more choose what movies they watch on their own. But in their childhood, until they can like drive, these are probably the only 2 live action remakes I would allow them to watch. And that only after, especially for How to Train Your Dragon, that only after watching the originals. But I wouldn't be like, why on earth would you watch the live action remake? Because it's an okay movie. It is honestly a solid movie. They just made a few small changes, so it's not as big as like the Disney changes that are just... But anyway, it was just those little changes that when you compare them then to the original, it takes it takes the story down a little bit, in my opinion. But that's with my context of having watched the original and loved the original and grown up with the original. So in not having the context of the original, like trying to view it without the context of the original, it's a solid movie. It is a solid movie. I will give it like a 5 out of 10. And it's just brought down because of the kind of unfortunate performances of the other main kids and the 2 things that they took out. That's really what brings it down. But visually well done. Some of specific actors did very well, or at least adequately. And yeah, for the most part, the storyline was fine. It was just those little things they took out that, because of the context of the original, and me growing up with that and my love for that, have a bigger impact than they probably do for people who don't care as much about the original movies. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm just gonna keep repeating myself if I go any further, so I'll stop. Feel free to drop your comments, your thoughts in the comments. Did you enjoy the movie? Were you thinking, oh my gosh, this is awful? Why does this exist? Like, I'm questioning why it exists too, but I appreciate the fact that the original director for the first movie went, they're doing this without me and with or without me, so I might as well make sure it's good. We appreciate you. Thank you for helping try to keep the heart of the story. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Drop yours in the comments. I post videos on this channel on Saturdays and on my audiobook channel on Thursdays. I'll see you all next time.